I was going to be trying to shoot a little green screen video, but I just got back from the gym and I'm wearing green, which means like I'll probably look like a Cheshire cat if I try to crop out the background to be my head. So I've got a different video idea for you. Today, we're gonna talk about some mistakes that I made in 2021. Obviously, you can't have like my size of portfolio and not screw some stuff up. So in this video, here's 3 huge, massive, we're talking mistakes that cost me maybe tens of thousands of dollars per mistake. And you get to hear them. And we're gonna move forward and you can save yourself tens of thousands of dollars. No real camera, we're gonna do this on the phone, let's go. We can't simply just discuss mistakes and regret without having some forlorn music on the piano, am I right? So we're about to cover some things that are gonna be extremely important to you as an Airbnb host, multi-platform host, so please like the video. I can't believe I'm still soliciting, just cold calling you guys for likes on our video. But you get it, it's for the algorithm, so thanks. Now, mistake number 1 is we haven't been paid on Vrbo since mid-September, and that was a mistake in like kind of less like direct management. As you all know, that I gave Haley full control of the company, and we went multi-platform this last year, and we've got a ton of properties on Vrbo, right? I think we've got at least 50 of our properties on Vrbo. We don't have them all because some are just booked multi-month and we don't ever need to, so we just add them on as needed. But in September, they sent us an email that we missed, and it said, hey, we need a new tax document from you. There seems to be some form of clerical error. We're gonna stop paying you. Well, I didn't notice because their money's good and we've got way too much cash right now anyway, so we're not really reconciling these things as much as we should, and that's a failure to manage the accounting on my side. And my accountant didn't catch it. She's been working on some other stuff so we can get new deals. We just it was an oversight. So long story short, we filled out this document, but we still haven't gotten paid the money. And it's probably near $100,000 in Vrbo income in nearly 4 months of operations that we've got paid. And what you can do to prevent this, and Airbnb's got a tax document, we talk about it all the time. And actually, we'll talk about that here in a second too. Essentially, we are using a different email for Vrbo so our people can log in than the main email that we get all of our email correspondence in. You can have multiple emails listed on Vrbo, and Haley did that as a level of protection, I think. And also, when Vrbo wants to like cancel a guest or handle a resolution, they'll call. So Haley has been highly like relying on calls. But by not merging this highly busy Vrbo email account, we've been missing key emails. And I looked and there's other emails in there operationally that we should have been fielding. So now we're working a way to integrate our emails so that way we don't ever miss a beat. And that's really what you can learn from this. Of course, a best practice is to reconcile your payments and stuff. And I really don't ever want to touch accounting or taxes in this channel because I'm really not an accounting professional or a tax professional. But there are some basics in accounting and reconciling, your numbers as a business that I think we will do because obviously this kind of mistake makes a lot of sense. So that was mistake number 1. It's not going to permanently cost us $100,000-ish, but it's costing us that money right now. And not having the cash means that if we wanted to use it, then we can't use it. But your boy's not going homeless. So anyway, let's move on to mistake number 2. Actually, mistake 1.5, same thing applies, but with Airbnb. We actually legit lost unrecoverable money in a way on our co-hosting activity. And I'll probably do a full video on this co-hosting debacle, but when we started co-hosting, we created a new account for our co-hosting guy. Jonathan, my assistant, has been handling our co-hosting properties. And when we created that new account for him to be able to just handle the rev share stuff to make accounting easier, speaking of accounting stuff, we failed to upload the same type of W-9 tax document that Airbnb requires otherwise. And what Airbnb does, instead of not paying you, they just pay you less. So with co-hosting, we take like 20 or 25% revenue on a property on the total like revenue after cost of housekeeping. But what Airbnb does is they deduct about 25 or 30% of your top line. So what'll happen is for every $1,000 we get in, we only get $700. Now out of that $1,000 that we got in, 150 of it might go to housekeeping. And then from there, the 850 we would split, right? We'd take 25% or 20%, and then the host would take, like the owner would take the rest. So in the case that like we say we take $200 of the 850, well, Airbnb already deducted $250 from the payout. So when we calculate this, that we deduct the 150 for housekeeping, and then we give everything else minus 200, so we would give 650 away, right? So we've given away 650, and we've spent 150 on housekeeping, so that's $800 we spent, but Airbnb only paid us $750. So we've been working for free and or at a deficit on our co-hosting properties for multiple months. We fixed this about a month and a half ago, but we solid ran for 3 months at a loss because of a tax document. So these little things actually make a big deal. So that's mistake 1.5. Now, mistake 1.2 is that we've been using the same staff for multiple types of positions throughout the company for a while now. And that's because, of course, I'm a jack of all trades and I love doing staging and stuff. So when I go and do staging, I'll just go hit it, right? I'll like stage 10 or 11 units. You saw the ones I did in Philadelphia over the summer. And I painted my own paintings for that. You know, I painted that one back there, you know, stuff like that. So I have fun, and we kind of blast off and get them done in a good, quick order. But as far as the company goes, Haley has had a stager that kind of does work, and Haley will get involved, but Haley also runs everything else. Now, running 100 plus properties, there's a lot to do. And so what's happened is we picked up 3 townhomes in Houston. We got 2 months of rent for free, and we unfortunately are paying more in rent than I like, right? And I wasn't involved in the negotiation of the deal because I hired a guy to start doing the sales. And so that's another part of this that we'll talk about in a separate video. I have a sales guy now picking up doors, 50 at a time, 100 at a time. We're trying to work on these really big doors. But he came across a deal for these townhomes, and we ended up paying a little bit more in rent than I like. That's not a terribly large deal, but it does factor into break-even costs. But the big, what I would say, the big problem with this deal is it took us 6 or 7 weeks per property to get staged, right? For all 3 townhomes, and the rent for these townhomes is $4,000 a piece. And so what we're looking at is we burned $12,000 in rent for one single month, and where it should have taken us maybe 2 weeks to stage these, we took an extra 4 or 5 weeks. So we burned $12,000 in rent with no revenue, right? And so the revenues on these townhomes, they should make $8,000 to $11,000 a month is what they should make. So we burned $30,000 in potential incomes. And since the rent was free, that was all free and clear in our pocket, because we decided to mix the same staff that we would typically do operations with staff that were now assigned to do a project. So what this means for you is in future videos, I've got to go back and kind of get in my head and go, okay, so what can I tell you about operations teams, and what can I tell you about doing projects? What is the difference between an operations manager and a project manager? And this matters. And the reason why you don't give your operations manager projects is not because they're bad at projects, but if every single day they wear an operations hat, they're gonna be in conflict with these projects. So the failure to blitz these fast enough was a problem. We're also making some adjustments, and we're going to be working with some companies that are actually very good at this. So if we ever do have another project where we don't think we have the staff available to do it as quickly as I do, because as you guys see, I've got videos where I'll pop up apartments in 48 hours. If we don't have the staff available to do exactly what I want to do with these listings, we're going to hire professional companies to do it, and we'll probably do some videos of these various companies and see how they do. We'll do tryouts here on the channel. So that's gonna be pretty exciting. So that's mistake number 2, not staging fast enough on some expensive properties and just burning 30 grand. We went a little over budget on the staging costs for that, but that was actually more so because we wanted to try to create a look, and right now everything's more expensive than it should be. And I don't really say that's a mistake that we made, but that's just economic truth right now. A lot of you that are staging properties, you're going to pay more now for stuff than you would have 2 years ago. There's no way around it. So we're not happy about that. It will affect our profit and loss at the end of our lease, but it is what it is, and you kind of go roll with the punches. And when it comes to stuff like that, what I can tell you is even though you have an extra hardship, you need to recognize that everyone else has the same hardship. So the winners are the ones that do the best with the difficulty, right? With the new challenge, the global variable that affects all of business. Those who adapt the best will make the most money, or lose the least money. And sometimes being a winner in business is that you lose the least when the time comes that everybody's losing, right? Because if you lose smart and everybody else loses dumb, they go out of business and you stay in business, right? So don't always look at it as adversity as this pending threat, like this doomsday kind of threat. You can look at these types of bits of adversity and go, wow, this is something that could really kill off some competition, and we can be the ones that grow through it. So get excited about some challenges instead of just afraid. Okay, that brings us to mistake numero tres. So this third mistake has to do with direct bookings, multi-month direct bookings, and it put us pretty much in a landlord situation, which was really rough. Now, there's a little complexity to this one too, because John Rico in Philadelphia, he suffered what's called an aortic dissection 3.5, maybe even 4 months ago, and he's been in the hospital ever since. So John's been fighting for his life big time, and it really sucks. And so he was about to get it out. He was in a wheelchair, and then he had a stroke, put him right back. He had 9 heart surgeries in like a month and a half, 3 of them within 24 hours. He almost didn't survive the third one. He had an infection in his chest. So John's been fighting for his life, which is a really sad thing that we've been going through in Philadelphia. And I really didn't want to talk about it until we, knew he was going to survive. And it really looks like he's going to survive. He should be starting rehab, rehabilitation, like physical therapy and stuff, on Monday. So hopefully, that actually goes well, because I missed the guy. Now, John Rico was running all of Philadelphia, so we kind of did a torch handoff, without, communicating, because obviously, end up in an emergency room, you don't really communicate at that point. He was vented, so a lot of the stuff was okay, so what is John doing? Now, we had a direct booking, a multi-month, with this girl who lived in this townhome of ours, and we picked up these townhomes, and they weren't really that nice, and that was problem number one. We picked up some properties that didn't really fit our vision for what we wanted, and there's a style of home called a Trinity home in Philadelphia. They're pretty available, they're pretty cheap, they're 2 bedrooms that stack on top of the living room, and they're narrow. And so we got a bunch of them, and the first batch really didn't work out. And so we got these other ones, and they're still not really working out. So we put a family in one of these Trinity homes. And we put that family in the Trinity home probably in April, right? Maybe March. And they're paying their rent, but we're not charging them a lot. We're charging them a little bit more than we pay in rent, just to kind of get the thing off the books. Well, when John went into the hospital, our new girl who took over, Nadine, she's our housekeeping lead in Philadelphia, she started taking over, and we just failed to discuss what was up with this one unit. I knew it was occupied, but I didn't really ask about the circumstances, and we just forgot to collect money from her for a couple months. So I think August rolled around, right? Maybe September, hold on. September was when we first discussed it. We're like, okay, so what's going on with this property? They're like, there's this family living in there. I'm like, okay, cool. Make sure you go collect money. Well, in October, we tried to collect money from them for both October and September, and we ended up not being able to. The lady decided to get up in our tailbone about some arbitrary problem with the property. Like, hey, I need this fixed. I'm not going to give you rent. So she did one of those, I'm not going to pay you because something's broken kind of things. She never reported it broken. But anyway, she was just using some form of mechanism to not pay rent. So she stood on that property through the next couple of months, and we were going to have to evict her. So basically, long story short, is the property went a good solid 5 months without us collecting any money, which puts us at about $10,000+ in loss. And we're now currently in the process of having to fix what has been a relatively trashed townhome in Philadelphia, repaint it, get everything looking good again so we can get back on the Airbnb space. It's January and we still don't have it listed. We're about to get it relisted again, but it's been a huge problem. So what we've learned from this is if we do take a direct booking instead of doing it on Airbnb, we can't do cheap direct bookings. We gave this property away at a price point that any family who could be at risk of defaulting on rent and needing to get evicted could have pulled the same maneuver. And that's essentially what happened. We found somebody who wasn't really in great financial condition, and we gave them a property at an affordable price, and that class system kind of rent level of people, unfortunately, that's what landlords all go through, is how much rent, if I charge XYZ per month, at what level of rent do I start to get myself at risk of getting the wrong types of tenants that are prone to eviction. Luxury properties, it doesn't happen so much, except for my penthouse, my neighbor, there's only 6 penthouses in this building, and my neighbor got evicted a couple months ago, but I think he was actually playing the system and was he's a professional tenant. And so, because remember, he's talking trash about 2 other properties down the street from here. So I think his whole plan was to not pay rent and get evicted anyway. But so you get cunning people who do it for millions, but then you got a lot of people who get evicted just because they can't help themselves. And so we ended up renting to somebody who was prone to getting evicted. We got out of it because I gave them a really generous please leave offer, and they took it, which is really cool. So instead of being combative and yelling at them and being a dick, because I felt hurt, I felt used, I just tried to keep it professional, and I gave them an offer. I said, hey, if you leave at this date, I won't pursue you for all this extra money, right? I will just not try to come after you for all this stuff. And she took that offer, which was really cool. She was trying to get like all up in my grill and yell things at me and try to like bait me into saying something stupid that she could then possibly use in court if I did try to evict her, but I dodged all the personal stuff. And that's my tip for you there. So if somebody owes you money and you feel like you want to tell them your mind, don't. Just keep your mouth shut. Because when it comes to eviction court, if you say anything, like she even tried to say that she doesn't feel safe and I'm harassing her, and it was very obvious that that wasn't the case, thank God, because she can use that stuff to get a restraining order against her landlord or against me or something like that, and then makes the eviction process much more difficult. So you need to know tenant law in your state before you go and say something stupid. So we got out of it with maybe $10,000, $12,000 in loss, but it could have turned into her still having possession of the same property April, May, or June, because in Philadelphia, it's really hard to evict somebody in the middle of the cold, dead winter. So we kind of got out a little bit more easily. So that one's a hot mess. So direct bookings are kind of tough, and I will be doing more videos on direct bookings. I've got a buddy named Mark from Boostly who's got a whole direct booking. He actually just released a book, by the way. And so I'm probably gonna buy that book and see what he has to say, because I think it's really cool. Direct bookings are the future. Online travel agencies like Vrbo, Airbnb and stuff, they bring you customers. They have access to customers, but as home share becomes more in vogue, people will be looking for home share direct instead of going to like these main arenas where there's a bunch of hosts and a bunch of users. And if you can be prepared for the direct booking movement that is inevitably to come, as these online travel agencies start getting cut out of the deal, you don't have to pay them their 11% or their 18% commission, more money for you. And arguably in that marketplace, you can get more money because if there's less supply, you may have less, like on Airbnb, one thing that a lot of hosts complain about are there's these really nice properties that prices are like rock bottom, like people are just giving away the farm on these properties. Now this used to be the case because hosts who like were doing it part-time didn't know how to like regulate the prices for market, and so they were just giving their stuff away too cheap because they didn't know any better. That was 2014. Now, because of COVID and oversupply, there's too many properties, not enough travelers kind of thing. In some areas, people are just dropping their prices because they need to get filled to cover their rents. So we're still seeing a little underpricing, and that is leading to this reputation kind of clash where it's kind of hard for you to charge a premium if your competitor's charging less for the same type of product. You go direct, you're gonna have your customers bumping into less instances of that, which means you can fetch a more premium price more consistently. So there is going to be good here. So stay tuned for all these other videos that have come from my mistakes. This is me letting you know that I've made them as per usual. This channel has all been about growing an Airbnb business from scratch yourself, learning along the way. And yeah, we're at about 100-ish, 120-ish properties now, and Haley's adding these properties with the sales guy that we're working with, and everybody's learning how to work together. So we'll have a lot of success stories to tell you here in 2022. We're also intending to go international, so I will be seeing you in other countries around the world, picking up some properties too. Excited to show you that. If you have any questions, want to learn some stuff, put it in the comments. I will be doing a boot camp, by the way. Another announcement, I'll be doing like a 2-day sales boot camp, how to sell landlords. So I'm a sales professional for almost 15 years now, since 2007. And I've been a sales coach since 2009. A manager, then coach. So I've been teaching salespeople since 2009. And one of my biggest belief systems on arbitrage, my kind of thing where you don't own the property, is you need to sell the landlord on doing this business model. And using sales techniques gets you the results that you need. So here in late February in Dallas, I'll be doing a 2-day boot camp. Stay tuned. I should have a link for tickets to that boot camp soon. It won't be at the bottom of this video, but stay tuned for the next. It should be up by then. Thank you so much, guys. As always, I'll see you on the other side.